They were once the apex predators of Ice Age America, towering, muscular canids with jaws strong enough to crush bone. Dire wolves, unlike the creatures of fantasy television, were very real. Larger than grey wolves, they hunted giant sloths and mastodons across a frozen landscape, only to vanish over 10,000 years ago in the Great Extinction event that closed the Pleistocene epoch. And now, in an era defined by synthetic biology and scientific ambition, they've returned, or so the story goes. On April 7th, 2025, Colossal Biosciences, a biotechnology company headquartered in Dallas, Texas, made a startling claim. They had brought the dire wolf back from extinction. With cinematic flair, they introduced 3 striking white-furred canines, Khaleesi, Romulus, and Remus, as the first so-called de-extincted dire wolves to walk the earth in over 12,000 years. Their debut was accompanied by an evocative press release, polished promotional videos, and images that rippled across news sites and social media. The narrative was irresistible. Extinction reversed. The world took notice. Science communicators hailed it as a milestone. Investors saw an opportunity. The public was awed. And yet, within days, the jubilation gave way to skepticism, then criticism. Because as scientists began to examine the details, a more complicated reality emerged. These creatures weren't dire wolves. Not really. In an interview published May 2025 in New Scientist, Colossal's chief science officer, Beth Shapiro, a prominent evolutionary biologist and expert in ancient DNA, clarified what many researchers suspected. It's not possible to bring something back that is identical to a species that used to be alive, she stated bluntly. Our animals are grey wolves with 20 edits that are cloned, and we've said that from the very beginning. That clarification, while transparent, didn't satisfy critics. The animals were genetically modified grey wolves, not true dire wolves, Anocion dirus, which had diverged from grey wolves, Canis lupus, roughly 5.7 million years ago. While the creatures bore a striking physical resemblance to dire wolves, thanks to 20 carefully designed edits across 14 genes, the core of their DNA remained grey wolf. So why did Colossal describe them as de-extincted dire wolves? According to Shapiro, the company chose to adopt the morphological species concept, which defines species based on physical traits and appearance. We chose to call them dire wolves because they look like dire wolves and reflect the key traits we found by sequencing their genome, she explained in a Reddit AMA last month. But in biology, there are many competing ways to define a species, and the one most widely accepted by scientists is the biological species concept. This standard defines a species as a population capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. Under that definition, Colossal's wolves are still Canis lupus, altered perhaps, but fundamentally grey wolves. Paleogeneticist Nick Lawrence from the University of Otago in New Zealand echoed this in a statement to Vox. Colossal says the grey wolf and dire wolf genomes are 99.5% identical, but that's still over 12 million individual differences. A grey wolf with 20 edits to 14 genes, even if these are key differences, is still very much a grey wolf. To understand the controversy fully, we need to understand how these animals were made. Colossal began with DNA extracted from dire wolf fossils, enabling them to map segments of the ancient genome. Then, using CRISPR-Cas9 technology, they edited grey wolf blood cells to mirror those ancient traits, adjusting genes related to fur thickness, skull structure, body mass, and coloration. These modified cells were then used to create embryos, which were implanted into the womb of a domestic dog, acting as a surrogate mother. The result? Genetically engineered wolves that resemble their extinct counterparts, at least in appearance. Colossal insists that this visual accuracy justifies the terminology. The company argues that if something looks like a dire wolf, moves like a dire wolf, and shares key genes with a dire wolf, it can be colloquially called one. But critics contend that this is more branding than biology, an example of scientific storytelling that leans too heavily on optics and not enough on rigorous taxonomy. Indeed, Colossal's press release referred repeatedly to the return of the dire wolf, not to a modified facsimile or proxy species. The scientific community took issue with that framing, saying it bordered on misinformation, especially when addressing the general public, who may not discern subtle differences between a genetically informed approximation and a true resurrection. This isn't Colossal's first foray into the blurry world of de-extinction. Founded by tech entrepreneur Ben Lamb and backed by heavyweights like investor Peter Thiel, Colossal has ambitious plans. Its pipeline includes projects to revive the woolly mammoth using Asian elephant surrogates, bring back the flightless dodo bird from Mauritius, and resurrect the enigmatic Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine. These efforts, Colossal says, aim to correct the ecological imbalances caused by human-led extinctions and climate change. But with every announcement, the same questions follow. Are we reviving species or creating new ones inspired by the past? The implications stretch far beyond taxonomy. De-extinction raises profound ethical and ecological concerns. What happens if these organisms are introduced into modern ecosystems that no longer resemble the ones they evolved in? Will they thrive? Will they suffer? Could they outcompete endangered species, or worse, become invasive? Even keeping them in captivity is ethically complex. Khaleesi, Romulus, and Remus may look like relics of a prehistoric world, but they are also lab-born animals, products of genetic manipulation, not natural evolution. Their psychological development, social behavior, and health risks remain largely unknown. Moreover, what is the role of memory in science? When we attempt to resurrect extinct species, are we preserving history or reinventing it? What gets lost when we focus on form over function, appearance over genetic authenticity? There's also the risk of public misunderstanding. If companies can call any edited organism resurrected, where does the boundary lie between authentic science and biotech spectacle? Colossal defends its terminology with a philosophical edge. Species are ultimately a human construct, they said in a statement to Live Science. Other scientists have a right to disagree and call them whatever they want. Khaleesi, Romulus, and Remus are the first dire wolves to walk the earth in 12,000 years. That line, species are a human construct, is not entirely wrong. Taxonomy is a human attempt to organize life's diversity. But when that construct becomes a commercial tool, it must be wielded responsibly. In a world increasingly shaped by synthetic biology, precision in language matters more than ever. Still, we cannot deny the scientific achievement itself. Extracting viable DNA from Ice Age fossils, editing it into a living genome, and bringing that life to term through cloning, all of this is extraordinary. The birth of Colossal's wolves marks a frontier moment, a glimpse into a future where extinction may no longer be final. But let's be clear, this isn't resurrection. It's mimicry. These are not the dire wolves of old, but echoes of them, reflections of what we imagine they were. They are expressions of our desire to reverse loss, to undo damage, to play God with the genome. And so the debate continues. Are these wolves scientific marvels or marketing metaphors? Are we reclaiming lost chapters of evolutionary history or writing entirely new ones? And as we chase these ancient shadows, are we illuminating the past or obscuring it? Khaleesi, Romulus, and Remus walk now through human-made enclosures, icons of what's possible when ambition, science, and storytelling collide. They are beautiful, haunting, and controversial, and they may just be the beginning. Because if we call this success, what will we call the mammoth? Subscribe for more stories that push the edge of science, technology, and ethics. Because in this strange new world where extinction is optional, the line between truth and tale is getting harder to see.